Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Sorry for getting everything cut off for a little late today, but we've got an exciting presentation, and I'm just going to wait till all of the participants get loaded in. I can see them piling in as we speak. In the meantime, my name is Nick Talbert. I run marketing at Quartile, and I'm very happy to introduce my two guests today. First of all, we have our fearless leader, Daniel, our CEO at Quartile, and he is going to be speaking with the one and only Urban Cowgirl. Sherry Vet is a Amazon ads evangelist and guru and all of the things in between we're excited here to talk to you about the age of automation and talk about how this is going to help you do better within your Amazon accounts as a whole. Daniel, Sherry.
Hey guys, great to be here with you. Hey Nick.
Hey Daniel, can you hear me?
How are you, Sherry? Yeah, doing great.
Yes, good. Super glad to be here today. We have great stuff to share. So so why don't we just go straight into the content? We're going to have, just to give you a quick roadmap of this event, we're going to start off talking about my results with Quartile and what it looks like in the actual advertising campaign so you guys can get some context. Then we're going to move straight into strategy, into some really good takeaways that you can use even if you're not using automation. You should get some good insights into kind of what has changed in the Amazon world, definitely what has changed with Amazon advertising. Daniel has a ton of access to data and deep data, so he's gonna be able to kind of jump in here with me and give you guys some fantastic insights that you really can't get without his view. And then we're gonna go in and talk about exactly how Quartile works and how you can combine strategy with Quartile to get even faster results. So the first thing we wanna talk about is really the fact that strategy plus automation, at least in our company, has really equaled scale. And I think most people misunderstand scale. They consider scale just rapid business growth or accelerated growth. And scale is actually the ability to grow without using more resources. So scale is accomplished when you get to a place in your business where you're starting to grow. And of course, in the early growth phase, you're having to use quite a few resources just to grow. So your revenue and resources are equal. When you get to a point where you're scaling, what is the advantage there is that you should drive more revenue with the same resources. So this is going to be an example. I want to give you guys kind of a contextual example of what it looks like before and after Quartile in my accounts. Obviously, it's going to look huge because we went through the COVID mania in 2020. So it's pretty hard to get a true view of what we're looking at. But I can definitely show you guys how Quartile changed the account even in late 2019. Definitely how it's gone ahead and changed our progress in 2021. You can see the blue line is our sales line. Starting from the very beginning, this is an account that I've been managing for 5 years. And you can see from the very beginning, I had a lot of manual campaigns. I knew I needed to move to automation. I sort of shopped all the vendors and all the options and chose Quartile. I did test a few other software tools and they just didn't work. I've been, for those of you that don't know me and you're here on the Quartile side of things, I've been doing advertising since the early days of Google AdWords from early 2000 and then all the way through to the early days of Amazon. So I've been doing PPC for about 20 years. And pretty seasoned at how to run a PPC campaign. So when I was out there, my manual campaigns were doing great. And I really wanted a service provider that was going to bring something to the table that made sense to me with like a deep kind of mastery of PPC, and Quartile had it. So if you're looking at the line on 2019, this is when we transitioned the account to Quartile. And I think the most notable point on this is how much, if you look at all my manual campaigns, how much like impression share and growth Quartile was able to achieve for us. And especially when we got into COVID, where it was so competitive and there were so many new users, Quartile continued to kind of hold the pace and keep us at the top of search, keep us on the detail pages for a really nice, average ACoS of about 30%. So of course, everyone wants to see the real numbers because just so you know what we do, I mean, we're a competitive strategy shop. So we only have 3 numbers that we measure all our results by. We look at market share, we look at revenue, and we look at profit. And we have growth targets every single month, and that's all we do. So this isn't a great account because it's a legacy account for the 5-year account, but I just showed you. And this is going to be our April performance numbers. Now, of course, this is a home and kitchen. This is a soft good in home and kitchen. It's sheets. And the one thing about this account that was tricky is we had a record year during COVID for this product. But even so, there's really no excuse for that 2% year-over-year growth. We normally don't accept less than 30. So I definitely want to open with the thing that you want to take away from automation is the fact that we've been able to focus on this year-over-year growth as it became problematic. And then we've already driven revenue in May up to 6.2 million as a result of being able to focus on what we do and letting Quartile kind of manage the daily minutia in our campaigns. At the end of the day, I think another key thing on this slide is the fact that Quartile has been able to drive a consistent amount of coverage at a consistent price. So we never drop below the $1 million mark profit after ad spend. And we don't drop below 20% profitability after all FBA costs, all ad spend, everything. Now we're going to move into another account. This is a different product. If you look, I want to make sure you have some context of how it works across different verticals. The first account is like an FBA seller. They're pretty much focused on Amazon. They've been there for a very long time. They're very seasoned FBA people, and they kind of live and die by the Amazon search results. This right here is a D2C brand, and it's a premium brand. So if you're thinking about men's underwear, so these are about $80 for a 3-pack. So they're competing with some pretty low cost alternatives, but they're D2C, and you can still see that we've had tremendous growth for them. So when we brought them into Quartile, they came to us in 2019, and the real situation was that their e-com team, it's a team of about 10 people, the CMO was not hitting their targets. They were not hitting their holiday targets. And she kind of rolled into October and was like, you have to do something. You need to take on our account because we have to hit these targets. And I was like, well, I don't know, this isn't looking good. But we went ahead and took it anyway. We threw it into Quartile, and we just killed it in terms of that holiday and then the following holiday since. So if you're looking at the total numbers on this one, super good. We're hitting our growth targets. We're having great profit after ad spend because it's, manufacturer direct, D2C, they have massive presence outside of Amazon. But what I think is important for this strategy, for this particular vertical, is the fact that we just needed to capture digital shelf for the brand. They weren't maximizing their Amazon channel. So they had complete maximization on their e-com sites, fantastic, influencers and Google and all these things. But before they came to us in Quartile, they had not maximized the Amazon channel even remotely. Last one I think is super relevant. If you're if you're a smaller FBA seller, this is one product. So this is amazing to me. I mean, it's a wonderful product. It's a Shark Tank product. Love this account, but I think it's impressive that this is a small team. This is essentially 2 guys and this great product that they manufacture. And at this point, Mark Cuban has invested, but even before that, it's just such a nice, really great, solid company. But more important, it's just a couple of guys with one single product on Amazon. And it's really done an amazing job in Quartile. You can see the transition point there, 2019. And you can see that this for one product is doing incredibly well. It's one ASIN. So we're running at 216, 2020, 402, 2021. 132K after ad spend and 87% year-over-year growth. And this is where I really want to make the point that there's really no excuse, at least in our team, for a lack of growth due to COVID being so big. The only brand that we're struggling with, and I'm going to show you the strategy that we've worked on to kind of fix that first 2% slide, is really this one brand that we've struggled with in the FBA space. It's gotten, the space has just expanded so much. But I think when you come in here, you're really going to find that you can still achieve year-over-year growth like these numbers, even after COVID. So Daniel, I'm going to let you kind of speak to how we're getting so much growth and how we're getting so much coverage.
Yeah, so I think that this is a Quartile interface, a dashboard that we have on Quartile showing you guys how conversion rates fluctuate by hour of the day, by day of the week, right? So one of the things that allow Sherry and her team to be that aggressive without losing control, without having an ACOS going to the roof once they scale at that level, because we're talking about accounts that I know that she has accounts that spend more than $1 million a month. So what happens is that Quartile is going to First of all, isolate every single target. So every single either keyword or ASIN target campaign. So each campaign will just advertise one ASIN and will just target one keyword. And a couple of reasons why to do that. The biggest one is that allows us to manage the placement by hour. So we learn how conversion rates fluctuate by placement, by hour of the day, by day of the week for each keyword in each ASIN. And then given the strategy you are trying to achieve, so in this case, you might want to scale one account, you might have another account that is already scaled, but you need to bring the spend a little down to increase profitability without losing volume. What you want to do is to isolate, and then Quartile is going to learn how much your conversion rate will fluctuate for each keyword in each placement, in each hour of the day, in each day of the week, and we'll be making the adjustments. And that allows you to go all in. When you have the other reality, which is some campaigns and lots, hundreds, maybe thousands, I see so many sellers so proud and bragging that they have 1,000, 5,000 keywords in a given campaign. It's kind of the opposite because the placement adjustment is on the campaign level. So if you have 100 keywords, 1,000 keywords in the same campaign, you end up having to do an average for the placement adjustment because they will all follow the placement adjustment you do on the campaign level. They are all on the same campaign. So you have to do an average. You can't really be aggressive on the ones that really increase their conversion rates because it ends up increasing bids also on the ones that don't increase their conversion rates that much or that have a different behavior in different times of the day. And that is very hard. So I think that is one of the reasons, right?
I would agree. I think the structure, just because coming from an old school PPC background, we always did in Google, and then in the early days of Amazon, we do what's called a SKAG, a single keyword ad group. In Amazon, we call it a SKAC, a single keyword ASIN campaign. So I think fundamentally that's the right structure even before you figured it out from an engineering standpoint. It's absolutely the right structure just so that you can isolate all the things going on below the surface, including your search term matching and making sure that you get those CTRs and conversion rates that actually allow you to win top of search. So yeah, I totally agree that's the right way. And I think when Daniel speaks of placement, he's really letting you know if you're not familiar with that particular setting, that you get to determine at the campaign level whether you want to focus on search or focus on the detail pages. And that is part of your bidding strategy, is to kind of specify which of those things you'd like to do. And you can only do it at the campaign level. So if you're putting a lot of keywords with different priorities, it's not possible for you to push all of them to top of search, much less economically. Some are going to be fantastic, some are not, some are going to convert, some are not. So it's really key that you separate those things. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what's going on Amazon, because Amazon is just crazy. If anybody is on this session and you told me that Amazon wasn't crazy, that I would think that you were in the wrong session and you had a different business model. So this is the great acceleration. COVID pushed everybody onto the internet. It pushed all the shoppers onto Amazon, and things are moving insanely fast for all of us. And I super appreciate your time here today, because I know that we all have limited time, and I'm going to make sure that you get the most out of this event possible, because we are all accelerating and probably some of us losing our mind. Okay, so what we want to look at here is Prime members. We had 90 million, 2017. Now we have 147 million. We look at Amazon sellers. We had 3 million, 2017, and now we've got 6 million. We look at the advertising sales. This is probably the key thing. If you're going to think about the problem that's going to plague you over the next 5 years, especially if you're an FBA seller that lives and dies by search, you're just in Amazon, and if you don't win those search results, you don't have any kind of growth. If you're an FBA seller that's going to live and die by the search results, you're really going to have some issues with this problem over the next 5 years. Again, Daniel mentioned that I manage accounts that have over $1 million in spend a month. So when I'm doing that, I have the confidence that Quartile is going to kind of back my play as I get aggressive to hit those growth targets. Because again, we don't really get out of bed in the morning over here if we can't hit at least 30% growth. So working on the growth targets, I really count on Quartile to kind of manage that spend for me, keep the ACoS down, keep the client from emailing me basically. So as we come over here, this is the thing, it's 45%. So this is, again, the legacy account. I'm going to use it as a single account. I don't want to show you agency numbers. I want to show you one account so you get some context on what this looks like for you. So this is a single account. And what we've seen in 2017, again, I've managed this 5 years. In 2017, 16% of our sales, of our total sales, were coming from ads. And then now in 2021, 45%. It's definitely become a pay-to-play platform. And again, when it comes to profit, margins, growth, it's going to be the biggest challenge to stay ahead of that. So now, Daniel, I'm going to let you speak to this because you have more insight into ads.
Perfect. Yeah. So to your point, right? What's happening is that number of sellers more than doubled. Amazon's ad revenue is increasing very fast. So it went from like $1 billion a year around 6-7 years ago to $26 billion predicted for this year. And it's going to $85 billion, right? And I think that everybody that you speak with around the Amazon ecosystem, and especially when you talk about advertising, everybody sees that the average cost per click is increasing. Everybody sees that the percentage of total sales, or tacos, as so many people describe, is going up, right? And you can see that here, right? And you can see that when they release their results for first quarter 2021, so some months ago, they showed that while their total sales, so Amazon's total sales, grew 44%, increased by 44% compared to Q1 2020, so year over year, total sales on Amazon grew 44%. Their ad revenue grew 77%, so almost double the pace. So if they were having the same spike, the same growth on total sales that they have on advertising revenue, it basically would mean that they had 44% more searches and everybody was paying the same per click. So that's why ad revenue, advertising revenue for them, which is ad cost for the sellers, increased by the same 44%. The problem is that it didn't increase by the same 44%. It increased by almost double that pace. It increased by 77%. And these are public figures, public numbers that they disclose every quarter. So what's happening is that, yes, it is becoming more competitive and it's not going anywhere, right? To your point, Sherry, it used to be 16, 17, 18% of sales coming from ads. Then it stabilized at a third. Now it's getting more closer to like 55, 60, 50% of sales already coming from ads from time to time. And I can guarantee you guys that in 3 or 4 years, once their ad revenue gets to 65 billion, it's already going to be almost double the percentage that it is now. So your average cost per click that right now is around $1.50 on Amazon, sorry, $1.20 on Amazon, which is a 50% growth from 6-7 months ago, is going to have another 30 to 50% increase as well. Conversion rates are still the same. So if they're having more revenue in ads and you have not such a huge increase on the search volume, that means that the cost per click is increasing, assuming conversion rates stay the same. Your ACoS goes higher, it becomes more competitive. It's even more important to be sophisticated on your ad strategy or your ad approach. Otherwise, you're just going to fall behind.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the one thing that everybody on this webinar wants to take away is that Daniel is insanely good at math. So, that is his strength. I'm insanely good at advertising, but Daniel is the mathematician.
You're much better in advertising than I am in math, but it's
You're so good at math. So if anytime you're listening to Daniel's math, you're like, whoa, what's that mean? This is why you need machine learning, because you don't want to know what that means because it's too intense. So let's continue on. I totally agree though, that we're at this place where the ad cost is only going to go up. And I saw this in the years of Google. From 2006 to 2010, this happened in Google. It was the same kind of pattern, and the CPCs just continued to rise, and you just had to be so much more savvy on the things you did to win. So this is, again, why I really rely on Quartile, because I had to get savvy on converting more traffic at a higher pace. I had to get savvy on being very competitive, which is why I sit here today. But these are things that I had to do to kind of combat the rising advertising prices. So it's definitely doable, but you really are going to need some mathematics behind the bidding, and I'll show you why.
And to your point, right? Like when you think about scaling, right? And trying to get like serious in terms of advertising spend, like any additional efficiency gain makes a huge difference, right? The problem is that, for example, like we were showing there, you have 3 different placements, you have 7 different days of the week, and then you have 24 different hours of the day. So while usually what we see with people that manage ads manually or with more rudimentary solutions, what we usually see is that they will change bids once a week. Quartile is going to change bids 504 times a week, which is 24 hours a day, times 7 days of the week, times the 3 placements. So just that difference in which, like, doesn't matter how you want to be on top of everything, there's no shot you're going to be able to go in every hour and make a change in terms of, like, from 2 to 3 a.m. on a Sunday. You're not going to go in and reduce the premium you pay to appear on the top by 1%. You're not going to do it, right? No one is.
And I think you also know, I mean, we'll go straight on to the kind of meat here, but I think the main thing that we do know about bidding is that it's highly unlikely that you're going to make those mathematical decisions correctly as a human being across as many keywords and targets that are in Amazon. Okay, so here are kind of this is going to be the strategy piece. So you guys might want to have a pen and paper as we move into it. But this is going to be the problem that is preventing that first product from growing beyond 2%. Again, this is the first time in Q1 that we have missed our growth targets on that account in 5 years. So us hitting a 2% growth is not normal, and it definitely keeps me up at night. It's a big account, and I have to say that it took us a while to kind of look at this and figure out why. What is happening in this account? You can see that we're growing in apparel, we're growing in supplements, we're growing in snoring. Like, what is going on? And this is going to be the strategy session that I lay out in terms of what we did and what we've been doing to kind of solve that growth problem, and what we found in our ad campaigns and we're able to leverage to kind of start picking up the pace again. So we talk about 2010. 2010 was the rise of the FBA seller. That was when people started really adopting Amazon as a sales channel. People started building independent businesses on Amazon. All brands started coming to Amazon. Everyone started to really acknowledge in 2010 that Amazon was the e-commerce destination and would continue to do such, continue to grow in that direction. 2017 was the rise of Amazon advertising. So for all of us that were over here advertising in 2016, we know it was a far different deal. It was easier to win, it was less expensive, and it was also a far smaller piece of our total sales. Now, 2021 is going to be kind of the rise of the infinite digital shelf. And this is what's impacting your advertising, and this is what's impacting your campaigns more than anything of any of the previous periods. So if we look at this diagram, everything below the dotted line is things that you can't possibly see with the human eye happening underneath the surface of your advertising accounts. Everything you see above the dotted line is what's actually visible to you in the campaign manager or in your reports that you download from the campaign manager. That's going to be all you can see. And what I have noticed is that there's so much more below the surface than I'm really comfortable with. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So let's talk about this account, sheets and pillowcase sets. That's the category that we're playing in. We usually are always in the top 3 for the BSR, and we're usually in the top 5 for home and kitchen as a whole. When we get into here, this is where I think people really could lose sight of this. In the sheets and pillowcase set category, if you were to visually look at the first page of search, you'd have about 35 products, 35 parent ASINs. If you go over to the BSR, over there, you're gonna see another probably 50 products. And if you're super diligent, you're doing some scraping and you might go to page 2 or 3 of these online interfaces. But the issue with this is you're only seeing like the very, very tip of what's happening, because today in the sheets and pillowcase set category, there's 5,545 brands competing with me, 5,545. So even being a pay-per-click expert, it's highly unlikely, and an Amazon expert, highly unlikely that my human brain can wrap itself around all 5,000 of those brands, how they're differentiated, and what I should do with them on the targeting side. Now, also this morning, we have 531,000 ASINs in the category, just sheets and pillowcases, 531,000. So even though you see that, you think, man, okay, why? And I'm going to show you the strategy solution of why this causes problems and how you can get around them. But the main thing with this is, holy cow, even if my brain is going to be solid like it is, I'm a competitive strategist, I probably understand a couple thousand of these products, But man, I super am missing a massive piece of what's going on under the surface. And again, we got to remember that what's happening is COVID has pushed up the sellers from 3 to 6 million, and you don't take into account how many more ASINs each seller has. And then you don't take into account, like my own clients, all the clients in those initial screenshots, and the many more we have, they are all adding and launching new products. That's the focus of every brand I manage. I can't tell you how much market research we're doing because everybody, including this ASIN right here, is launching another 10 products this month. So as everyone's pushing more products onto Amazon, they're trying to grow based on their 2020 numbers. And then we have all these new folks coming in. We have manufacturers from 100 countries now. So we really get to this place where the digital shelf is infinite, right? We're not at a place like we are in traditional retail where there's a limited amount of room and we're gonna get either an end cap or we're not. It's not like that. Amazon has an infinite digital shelf, and Amazon prides itself on having a vast selection. It's how it built the empire. So you gotta realize that even though you think in search, let's kind of go through this, even though you think in search that this is all that's happening, you're really going to find out that Amazon has to sell all of these ASINs because Amazon has them in the FBA warehouses, right? They're operational people. They're not going to just let these things sit around. So Amazon is going to start to divide the shelf and make sure that they can have a vast selection and get coverage across a lot of different products as it grows. So the thing I want you to take away today when it comes to Quartile is I really want you to take away that machine learning is like a fast car. It really is. It's a very, very fast car, and it allows you to accelerate at both the pace of Amazon's own internal machine learning, because 65% of Amazon is run by AI. So it allows you to accelerate at the pace of Amazon, and it also allows you to accelerate at the pace of everybody else in the marketplace. So there is definitely a need for speed. It's almost impossible, one, to cut through all these products, and two, to be able to get coverage on all these products without some massive speed and horsepower. So the one thing that I think a lot of people overlook, they talk about retention, they talk about loyalty, which are fantastic things to measure in terms of your brand growth. But the one thing that really drives brand growth, especially in 2020, is acquiring new customers. It's just documented on any good study that the correlation between revenue growth and your brand growth, it's all correlated with your ability to acquire new customers and the pace that you're doing. So you're definitely in a race here. We see the numbers and we know that we're in a race to acquire customers faster than our competition. I think we've always known that. Anybody on this session is like, yeah, I know that. But what we don't realize is that you're also in a race to acquire that customer before Amazon can sell them a similar product. So know that, you know, there's a great quote by Jeff Bezos where he talks about it's not his job to sell products. It's his job to let the shopper make a good purchase decision. He loves to delight people. He loves to surprise people. It's all coded into the algorithms. And so he's coming to this place where he wants selection, he wants surprises, and he wants to just give them everything they would possibly need to make their purchase on Amazon. He has no brand loyalty or preference. So I think the main thing that we got to take away here is it's not just your competition. It has everything to do with the fact that Amazon is also at the same time trying to sell that shopper a similar product, and they understand which products are very similar to yours. So the reason we want to accelerate growth is we really want, and I'm going to let Daniel weigh in on the next slide in terms of how this happens financially. But the thing that we really want to talk about on our side as a growth specialist, how we do this. I think the main thing that people don't understand in terms of competitive strategy and market share and actually driving an increased revenue is when you're being competitive, your goal is to always kind of build that wedge that you see there in the profit section. Because competition, this is not sport, it's business. And competition is based on not only the profit that you have, but the potential revenue you have to continue to compete, especially if you're using advertise as the growth channel. So if you're advertising as the growth channel, it's really important that you have really deep pockets with profit so you can continue to play to win and maintain your market share. So the main thing I think people overlook when it comes to Amazon, especially today, is they're over managing to T costs and A costs, and they're not managing to the speed of revenue growth that actually builds that wedge. And then going back to the other portion of it, which is where we need machine learning, is this kind of fixed cost and variable cost. Keeping the variable costs down. Obviously, as a business owner, you're keeping your fixed cost down, but the advertising is a variable cost. So you need some kind of mechanism to keep that cost down. And so that, and then you need another mechanism to push the revenue up. You need to do them at the same time. And that's how you build your profit wedge. That's how you clock $1 million a month in profit or 350,000. It's not by kind of granularly managing your T costs and A costs every single day. You really want to be focused on what's going to drive revenue and how am I going to drive revenue. So I like to let Quartile deal with these things. This is what the numbers look like. April numbers, they're just right here. You know, 30% A cost, 3.45 click-through rate on my most competitive keyword in search, 18.54 conversion rate, most competitive keyword in search, 229 average CPC. Super happy with these numbers. I got to figure out how to get that wedge. So again, and by letting Quartile focus on those numbers, we've been able to, these are going to be the May numbers. So that same brand that we were at, you know, capped at 5,200,000, we're at 6,200,000 for this month. So, and we're even higher this month, but we were that high in May. So by focusing on growth and letting me do the things I do, I don't have to come back and focus on the things that are not going to make me money. They're just going to save me money. I have to focus on making money. So Daniel, I'm gonna let you, you know, kind of explain how that works and how you maintain those crazy numbers across $1 million in ad spend with your bidding algorithm.
That is good. Yeah. So to share his point, right? I think that like there's no shot a human is going to be able to learn. Just these KPIs that you have on Quartile, and we are showing here for you guys. You have different conversion rates for each placement. You have different conversion rates for each day of the week. You have different conversion rates for each placement. You have different conversion rates like we showed on the previous slide by hour. So at the end of the day, it's not that, for example, when you try to look at a campaign, when you're going to optimize that campaign manually or with a easier or simpler software, what we see is that like it's just an oversimplification, right? Like this is my conversion rate. There's no such thing as this is my conversion rate. This is my conversion rate for this specific placement in this specific keyword for this specific ASIN at this specific time of the day in each of these placements in each day of the week. It's going to be completely different in a couple of hours from now, right? And it's going to be completely different this same hour in a couple of days from now. And your competitors are going to change their price. They're going to change their, they're going to do lightning deals. They get good reviews. They get bad reviews. You get sold out on a best-selling item. Then it's back in inventory. Then your competitor gets sold out. So there's no shot you're going to be able to get all these variables and make decisions online, right? Calling the right shot every time for thousands of keywords in all these different situations. On the other hand, what we cannot do, what Quartile as a platform cannot do, and our account managers are going to help you guys, and that's why I think that Youre excels, is that it's very hard for a platform like this without some human interaction, understand what you should be targeting. It's easy for me to get to what you target. The problem is that usually people are biased and they tend to focus on the wrong things. It's not just about lowering ACoS, it's not just about lowering tacos. Of course, campaign ACoS, tacos, they're all great sanity checks. But at the end of the day, what you're looking for is to gain market share and to have profits, right? And of course, you have to understand where your brand is. So you might have a nascent challenger brand. You're just starting, just think about profitability now is not going to do it. You're not going to scale. Or you might be already mature and you already gained the market share. Now it's time to focus on the profitability. So once you guys on board, we are going to be able to assign you an account manager that can come in, discuss the goal, discuss what you should be targeting, show you different scenarios, one more aggressive, one less aggressive, and so forth. Once we together decide what to do, then the AI, then machine learning is going to do it, right? There's no shot, like just what you see here. And then you have other variables, right? You have, for example, the spreads between how much you are bidding and how much the click is really costing. You have how much you want to spend on branded terms compared to non-branded terms. There's so many different variables that it has to be through AI, it has to be through machine learning, and it has to be granular. And I think that I remember the first time I spoke with Youre, she was explaining me her strategy of owning some very relevant for the category keywords. And I said, this is going to feel like a glove for you because your strategy that is be extremely aggressive in some keywords, make sure that you own the category is exactly our philosophy, right? So you don't have to be extremely aggressive in every keyword, but you have to know what you're trying to achieve. Because if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, there's no knowing what you're trying to achieve is not a guarantee of being able to achieve it. But not knowing what you're trying to achieve is a guarantee or a recipe for disaster, right? So you want to understand what you're trying to target. You want to discuss with specialists to see if that is doable, that is reasonable. You want to pace out the goal. You don't want to, if right now you're achieving 50% ACOS, and you want to be at 20, you don't want to target 20% right away. You start with what you have, decrease slowly. If right now you're spending $20,000 a month in ads, you don't want to target spending $1 million a month, like the account she was showing as an example. You want to grow slowly. You want to give it time for organic sales to follow and so forth. So I think that it's a very interesting discussion and combination here.
And I think it's pretty powerful for me because, you know, one of the things Quartile has done all the way along, as everybody can see from my stats and the campaign manager, is it's managed to hold top of search on my most competitive keywords, top of search that I had won manually. So when I came in, my biggest concern, like everybody who knows me here on the call, was like, I got to keep my market share, my visibility. I need to be dominant. And Quartile has been able to do that for me, and it's been amazing. And on the strategy side, I have to say that I have yet to meet a CEO or a CMO that doesn't get really engaged in the game of growing revenue and profits and market share. I could say that sometimes the CEO has no attention span for the minutia of PPC, but I've yet in a meeting to not have a CEO. Sometimes they'll just be listening in, you know, just to see what's going on. And then they'll like literally be like, okay, I'm gonna be back here in a minute. I want to talk about this. And they'll like literally cancel another meeting just to get in and get focused with the CMO and what's going on. And I think it's because they like the competition. They like the revenue drivers. They like profitability. So even though it seems daunting to kind of put yourself strategically behind your ad campaign, if you're not putting it in the minutia of daily bidding and you're putting it on the goal of how to drive revenue, I've yet to meet anybody who's not interested in that conversation.
Exactly.
So now let's talk about strategies. So this is going to be kind of what is happening that I think is the aha moment. When I go back to that account that was super struggling for the growth targets, I mean, I wouldn't call $5 million a month in sales struggling, but I would call 2% growth a big struggle. I don't care if it was COVID last year or not. So when we looked at that one and I was trying to say, okay, how are we growing at 70 in all of our other accounts? And then, you know, 60 on average, and then we've got this like 2%, what's happening here? So when I went to look at that, what I noticed across all of our accounts is that we were getting much more impressions at better prices in the ones that were growing. And I noticed that we were getting only keyword dominance on the one that wasn't. So this is one of those situations where with FBA, it's harder to kind of get into category and get deep, especially in a category that I just became aware of had 535 ASINs. I was aware of, like I said, a handful. So it was really what I was noticing is in apparel and these other like verticals we play in that we were getting a lot more impression share. And I noticed that we were also getting a much lower cost per impression, per 1,000 impressions, and that was really impacting the campaigns. So as soon as we kind of flipped the switch and turned our strategy up, it started working better. So this is why I want everybody to take away this, is I started troubleshooting the problem and trying to figure out what was going on. You know, the main thing I think most people don't realize is that there's two engines behind Amazon. There's the search engine, and then there's the recommendation engine. They're completely different technologies. And the recommendation engine is actually the holy grail of Amazon's engines. So even though the search engine's powerful, it's as good as Google, the recommender is actually what is the main driver of Amazon's revenue. So when it comes to like, you know, just the behind the scenes machine that is running Amazon, a lot of people are heavily focused on A10 and search, and they kind of overlook like the technology of the recommender and how it works. So this is going to be the thing that we've shifted our attention to that's making a big difference.
Sherry, while you do it, let me just make a call out here that from everybody I speak with, and we speak with a lot of people around, you are the only one that talk about it. So I think that like if there's one thing that I think that people should pay attention and understand well the concept is this, because this is a breakthrough, this is different, and I'm sure that they haven't heard that before.
Thank you for saying that. And I think the main thing that is also why Daniel and I are even doing this is, okay, going back to the Google days, I've always won in search by understanding the algorithm. You know, I like to consider myself like an algorithm whisperer. I try to understand what the engine wants and what it's making its decisions on and what the machine wants. And then I try to really kind of, not any kind of hacking, I'm just whispering, like trying to do the stuff that will make the algorithm do my bidding. So this is kind of, when I mean bidding, I mean get it done, get what I want done. I want to accomplish a goal. I need this kind of engine to do it. So I try to get underneath the machine and say, what do I need to do to get it to do this? And that's why it was so exciting with Daniel, because he was the one that onboarded me, and he is the engineer. And, you know, again, like the agency of the future is going to be completely, you know, you're going to need data engineers, or you're going to need to outsource that. You're going to need data scientists, analysts. We know what the world of machine learning looks like, and it's a lot of data, and it's a lot of, you know, analysts work on top of it. So when I met with Daniel, it was super exciting because he was the engineer, and I hadn't really got an engineering, you know, kind of worldview around machine learning, and I needed it, because then I got excited because I wanted to play, kind of like the CEO wants to play on revenue and growth. I got very excited when I started to understand that he actually had this other machine on top of the machines, and I asked a lot of questions, and it was very fun. So I think the main thing that's always been the one thing we do as a shop over here is focus heavily on just the algorithm itself, studying algorithms. So this is where the recommender, when I dug deeper, right, I realized there's 535,000 ASINs in here. I better figure out how and why Amazon's going to be recommending them, because obviously I'm not going to be able to target that many people and not go bankrupt, or my client, you know, so I have to figure it out. So the recommender is very exciting. And I think the main thing to take away with this is that the recommendation engine uses a combination of item-based similarity. So this is where, as humans, and we think really straightforward and laterally, we have deep understanding of strategic initiatives. So we think when we see something in our search term report, or we see something come up in our data, we think, oh, silly Amazon, they just don't understand my shopper. But what we forget is the recommendation engine actually really understands the shopper. It actually understands the user. So it's actually personalizing all of its recommendations based on the user profile. And it's 50% of how it makes its decisions. And it's mathematical. So maybe the recommender understands that the person shopping just decorated a blue bathroom. Maybe the recommender understands they're very price sensitive. Maybe the recommender understands that they like discounts and deals. Maybe the recommender understands that they tend to buy this at a certain time of the day, and they tend to add other things to their cart that look like this, and they aren't even related. I have a million instances when I started to study the recommendation technology that I started to understand, oh, I see it. I see why when I'm advertising whey protein, there's just a lot of really odd testosterone things, you know? I didn't really get that on day one. And after doing the recommender study, I was like, oh, I get it. They're like looking at whey protein, then they go look at this odd thing. So I think the main thing to understand is that that's going to be a black box to us. And for all of us kind of Google nerds and PPC nerds in this session, if you have an agency, I really appreciate you giving me your time. If you're out there doing a PPC nerd stuff, we love search because we fully understand search. It's keywords, it's targeting, it's actually like verbal intention of what someone wants to buy. It's pretty easy to do the matching on it. But we're not going to understand what is happening on the user side ever. There's no way. We don't have the data. And I think on the flip side of this, I'm going to let Daniel speak to this point, but I think the flip side of this is the fact that we got to realize as the prime shopper went from 90 million to whatever that number was, another 60 million people, that this recommender doesn't know all those people as well, right? It can't. I mean, it knows everybody else. You know, so they're all kind of new. They're coming in from COVID and they're buying elderberry syrup. And now Amazon's trying to figure out what the heck they want in 2021. And on our dollar, right? It's like, okay.
Yeah, and when you think about it, like Amazon is trying to think about Amazon like any search engine and any recommendation engine, right? So and we're talking about Amazon, but we could be talking about Walmart, we could be talking about Insta, whatever we want, right? They're all very similar in that sense. There is the fact that they also have their agenda, right? So they want to show whatever they think that might sell, but they also want to show whatever they have in inventory available. They want to show whatever has higher margins and so forth. So and like you said, it's not that linear. So some things obviously are very straightforward, like I'm selling a wine glass. I might want to target another wine glass, but I also want to target a wine opener. Right?
Yes.
Because someone that is buying a wine opener probably wants to buy a wine glass. But then you can start being less correlated or less linearly correlated, like a cheese book.
Yes.
Right? So people that buy a cheese book have probably they have a 50 times higher chance of liking wine and be curious and clicking and eventually buying a high-end wine glass than a random person. Right? They like good cheese, they probably like good wine too. They would be willing to buy a high-end wine glass. And then you have things that might be like completely or almost the opposite. Like you don't even understand why that correlation exists. And that's where I think it becomes powerful, right? Because we have a look-alike capability. So what we do, what Quartile does is that because we understand which category your product is in, because and all the subcategories that product is in, because we know which keywords it has on the title, we are going to find similar products on Amazon that have the same keywords on the title or on the same subcategories, and then we'll find what they are relevant to in common. And then we start finding what those, let's say you have one ASIN, we'll find the 10 most similar ASINs for your ASIN on Amazon, and we're going to find what they are relevant to in common. And then we'll see what we are not targeting yet that they are targeting, or they are relevant somehow. So we have access to lots of different APIs, lots of different stuff that can give us different recommendations and allow us to build a look-alike base. And by the way, we manage almost 5% of all Amazon ad spend globally now. So it's not that like we have a subset of 300 accounts. We have almost 5,000 accounts connected to Quartile. We're going to manage much north of $1 billion just on Amazon ads this year. So we have a capability of seeing things, understanding things programmatically without anyone intervening that are not achievable, like analyzing and crunching Excel spreadsheets. They're not. And then we start finding very interesting things. I always remember, and there's a New York Times article about Quartile. This is probably like 2 years ago, that we showed them that we have a client that they have the best-selling cheese on Amazon. It's a baked cheese bar, pretty cool brand. And then one day they called us and said, guys, what are you doing? You're targeting keywords like cauliflower pizza crust. And it has nothing to do with a cheese bar, right? And then I said, yeah, we don't know exactly, but the platform picked that out. Eventually we realized, and I think that we can send this article, Nick, when we send the presentation as well to everybody, we can send a copy of that article. It's a very interesting article. And then it shows exactly that at some point, that baked cheese bar became Amazon's choice for cauliflower pizza crust. And it was making a killing. It still does, but this is like 2 years ago. And then when they saw the results, they said, wow, that's very interesting. And they said, yes. And they said, why did you do that? And we said, we didn't, right? It's a machine learning model. It realized different behaviors, different products being advertised in different pages. And at the end of the day, it figured out that this was a great target. And then it used, and then there's no competition, right? Because you search for cauliflower pizza crust, you see a lot of cauliflower pizza crusts and a baked cheese bar. And then that baked cheese bar is also probably, and then you try to analyze the data and crunch it, but it's probably because it's a client that is looking for a high protein, low carb. They're probably on a keto diet. So it makes sense, right?
Exactly.
But those are the type of things that happen once you allow a machine learning without bias, you allow a machine learning platform to figure out the correlations.
Yeah, and I think it's a part of our brain, if I have it right, Daniel, is it like inference? I mean, we infer things and then we're wrong because we don't understand. I mean, if I am making decisions in search, anytime, anywhere, anyone, I'm going to jam. I absolutely understand keywords only because of the misery of doing it around the clock for, 20 years. I understand search. But really, with the user base being a black box, there's just, I now realize how little and how grateful I am that I had Quartile during COVID to win all that impression share, because I could have dropped the ball. So let's talk about this. So you guys,
and then you have, sorry about interrupting, just one last comment.
No, go ahead.
You have situations in which like lots of sellers have 200, 300, 1,000, 2,000 products. Then figuring out exactly which keywords they should be focusing on for each product, in each hour of the day, changing that, become more relevant. There's also capital allocation perspective in which you want to have more sales in less keywords than less sales in more keywords, right? You want to become relevant and dominant in some keywords because that will bring organic sales revenue stream for you, and that will give you budget to go for the next keyword, right? So it's tricky, and then you have different countries. Like probably 60% of our clients these days don't sell just in the United States, and then they might understand English pretty well, but not French, not Japanese, not Italian. So like having a platform that will do that for you in all the countries, you dictate the strategy, and the platform goes in, figures out the keywords in each language, figures out local ASINs in each of those countries that should be targeted. It's pretty different. And that's
amazing. We also have clients that are just, again, kind of, once again, the great acceleration. A lot of our clients are going into further international countries, but really, you know, the apparel brand that I showed you guys as my second case study, those guys are out of Canada and they're very dominant in Canada. But even then, we see the same growth numbers and the same sales revenue out of Canada using Quartile and using it, you know, on both sides. And again, it really is dominant, and to the point where that brand was like, you know, they had, because we're just a competitive shop, so they had like a smaller in-house team kind of doing their international stuff. And then, you know, the CMO was like, okay, we just got to give this international stuff over to Cherie and Quartile because it's not popping. So I think at the end of the day, it is like, it's really nice to have machine learning, especially when you're trying to head in to a different marketplace with all these different factors. And again, we know that a lot of the data coming through is just not going to be something that we can understand or tackle without a machine to do the math up against, you know, against the algorithm to figure out where to put us. So this is going to be a great example, so I can show you guys the infinite shelf, because it's just crazy. When we took the data, we looked at our market share. I'm going to be the bottom line across our top competitors. You would hope I was the bottom line. So we have, this is our top competitors. These are the top competitors in search, which means these are the guys that I'm always aware of. And sometimes they beat me, sometimes I beat them. You know, we're passing the ball. Nothing like good competition to keep you alert and on your game and making more money. So these guys are really good, but I can see here that I've got a pretty fierce competitor on the second line or the second wedge, but I'm like at the bottom and feeling good about this. So this is kind of who I think I'm playing with when I need to capture market share every single day. I think this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm going to drive revenue. I got to keep these guys down. I got to keep going forward in search. And then we started to kind of compare the revenue up against all the other ASINs in the category. So we started doing a classic kind of market share analysis in-house and saying, what's really going on here? And you can kind of see how big all the other ASINs, in terms of this is their revenue share. You can see how if you look at Feb 21, they're really like a chunk. If you go back to 2019 even, it was a pretty small sliver. But if you really look at February 21, I have got the majority of my market share spread across a lot of ASINs in the category. And I'm going to need to make sure I have better impression share. And this is the strategy that we've been building, is like, okay, how do we get better impressions? How do we get more impressions? And then more importantly, how do we get them for a good cost? Because it's obvious we can't afford to target 500,000 ASINs with any kind of accuracy, because we'll pay crazy CPCs. So we're really trying to say, okay, we just got to get more coverage on this expanded shelf. So what we've been doing in terms of winning the digital shelf that is working for us is really focusing on the other side of the coin. We don't lose our game in search. We're not changing what we do in search. But again, you can keep, you know, we've been with Quartile for more than a year and through all of COVID. So obviously Quartile kind of has our search game down. You know, we'll add other keywords, we'll do some things because it has a really simple campaign builder. But overall, I kind of own search, not too worried about it. So I'm coming back over here and I'm saying, okay, how am I going to win the digital shelf? So what we found is if you even look at, like, say, duplication, like if you're trying to kind of win in Google, you might say, okay, I've got to broaden exact. I'm only going to bid on one match type. Don't do that, because at the end of the day, you're going to find you're getting far more impressions. Even on your broad keyword campaigns, you're getting a lot of impressions on the detail pages in the category. Then you're going to find you can do some individual product targeting, but if you're trying to really come across the shelf, you got to hit the guys that are at the top of the food chain. Obviously, you've got to hit the guys that are kind of ranking and winning. That's pretty straightforward, but you aren't going to be able to go in with product targeting and hit the whole shelf. It would be crazy. So then we've really kind of combined some sponsored display. And again, the nice thing about Quartile is it kind of has all the ad placements available, so you can actually build a well-rounded strategy for the machine to run the bidding, instead of just like, oh, I can do this placement but not these others. So what we've done from there is a lot of sponsored display. And then really kind of the two game changers for all you guys that are here for strategy today and taking notes. Really the two game changers is like looking at category targeting and not looking at broad category targeting, but trying to determine which brands within the category we want to be advertising on. Because I think when I showed you that kind of everything below the surface of that dotted line, the thing that is happening on the infinite digital shelf is not everybody's a competitor. Let's get real. It's a lot of signal. It's a lot of noise. One of the problems we're having in sheets is just different fabrics are trending. Okay, like life changes, it's 5 years. There's different fabrics trending, and those fabrics are taking more market share because we don't have that fabric. So I think when you really start to assess your category, you want to assess the brands that are true competitors. And the goal is to really kind of filter out all the noise, because as the shelf expands and as the user base expands, there is a ton of noise, and you don't want to be kind of playing to that noise on your dollar. And of course, Quartile automates that. But even if you're doing anything manually today, be sure you're paying close attention to signal noise ratio, because there's way more noise than signal. So the last thing we're doing is Quartile's done this since day one, automatic targeting. We don't use automatic targeting as a search term mining tool. We use it as an impression tool. Quartile has fantastic auto campaign management. It's kind of one of the kind of foundations of how they built everything. So Daniel, do you have anything to add to like this type of strategy? Okay, so now the one thing, the outlaw tip that I want you to take away here is that you really want to measure your category campaigns based on cost per 1,000 impressions. So even if it's an auto campaign, this is such a key takeaway. We started looking at what we pay per 1,000 impressions in search. It was like $50 on our most competitive keywords. Sometimes it was just nuts. And this is like, you know, these are keywords that are coming in at, you know, 30% ACOS and just 1 million orders and high conversion rate. And we're paying like $50 CPM. So CPM is just simply taking, you know, for every 1,000 impressions that you're getting in that campaign, just put a, you know, do a quick, you know, formula thing to look at it. And you really want to be focused on your auto campaigns, category campaigns, broad keyword campaigns. Start to look at what you're paying per 1,000 impressions, because those impressions are insanely valuable. You don't necessarily want to just be focusing on those sales, because again, the majority of your sales are coming out of search. But again, it's not going to win the game just to focus on search. So you really want to be thinking about two metrics, obviously CPA and search, but then shift over to CPM in all of your metrics, because you should be measuring based on the cost per impression. Because when you have to cover 500,000 ASINs, you need it to be cheap. Okay, so this is going back to the original campaign that I showed you, the one that's struggling with growth that we're kind of clocking at now, trying to solve the problem. This is the campaign that we're pushing harder in category and trying to figure out how to get more impressions, because it's got, in terms of its impression ratio, it's still too low. And you can really see how well Quartile has done with winning both the sale, which is kind of coming mostly out of top of search, and impressions. And Daniel's going to talk about how, you know, how the machine kind of balances those two things, because I'm pretty impressed with when it does that. So here you can go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, so like we discussed before, right? So what happens is that, for example, let's say that you have let's say you're selling a dog bed, okay? And let's say it's a blue medium dog bed. What happens is that the way we see people usually structure their campaigns is that they have both, let's say that they have just 2 keywords being advertised on that product. So it's a seller that just has one ASIN, it's a dog bed, and it just has these 2 keywords, blue medium dog bed, and then just dog bed, okay? Obviously, these 2 keywords will have a completely different behavior when they appear on the top of the page. The more narrowed one, the more obvious one, like let's say someone searches literally for blue medium dog bed, and we show your blue medium dog bed on the top of the page. If someone clicks, they buy, because you're showing them exactly what they're looking for, right? So you probably will have a 300% increase on the average conversion rate of the campaign, because you show it on the top of the page, right? But if they just search for dog bed, they might be looking for a yellow dog bed, they might be looking for an extra large one. So they might get curious when they see the picture, but then they don't buy, because they were looking for another color or they were looking for another size. What happens is that the keyword dog bed has probably like 50 times more impressions and then more clicks every day. So when you look at the placement result on your campaigns, you just see, let's say, a 10% increase on your conversion rate on that campaign. So you would go in and you pay a 10% premium, or you don't even do that. We see like more than half of the accounts Quartile starts working on, they pay 0 premium on the placement. And the ones that do are doing that on the average of all keywords inside that campaign. Like we just discussed, some keywords might have a 5-10% increase in their conversion rates, and usually they are the broader ones, so they have more volume and they lower the average. And then the best keywords will have a 200-300% increase in conversion rates. You should be paying a 300% premium. The problem is that if you calculate your bid based on the average, and you do the premium that the average for that campaign, let's say, is 20%, so you're paying a 20% premium. What that means is that you are drastically underbidding on the one that really increases its conversion rate on the top, like blue, medium, dog, bad, and you're drastically overbidding on the one that doesn't. Like any average, you're overbidding for something, underbidding for the other situation. When you isolate, you can learn exactly how each of those 2 keywords are performing. And not just you can learn, you can act on it, because you can pay a specific premium when you appear on the top of the page for each keyword. And then you can learn how that conversion rate fluctuates by hour of the day as well, by day of the week. Because as we know, for example, if you're selling coffee, you're probably going to have a great conversion rate on Monday mornings, and you're going to have a horrible conversion rate on Friday nights. But if you're selling a wine glass, you're probably going to have a horrible conversion rate on a Monday morning and a spectacular conversion rate on a Friday evening, right? So what you want to do, the problem is it's dynamic, right? So some ASINs will perform better in different hours. They have different adjustments for even the same ASIN for different keywords. They vary drastically. So by isolating everything, that allows Quartile to learn in the most granular level we can, which is how that keyword or that ASIN target, because a lot of times, like you showed, it's about recommendations. So it's not just about keywords, it's about ASINs as well, but how your ASIN performs against each target, each keyword or ASIN target. And then we adjust placement exactly for that, which allows us to be extremely aggressive on the top of the page, which obviously is the premium and the most desirable placement when we should, but it allows us to reduce the bid on the keywords that don't really increase their conversion rates, on the hours of the day that are not that great on the top of the page. So that is what gives Quartile the power to allow you to increase the percentage of your sales going towards the top of the page without increasing your ACOS.
Nice. Okay, so I do think that's it's always so insightful when you talk about exactly how it works and why it works, because it does work really well. So it's super exciting to understand how that is coming together. Here's just a few other kind of rapid fire numbers so that you guys kind of get the whole sequence, and then we'll move into the next steps. But this is going to be like rapid fire numbers in terms of what Quartile does for us. This is going to be right now in this one account. This is not agency level. This is this one account. We're currently running 8,835 campaigns. Those are 8,835 campaigns that are generating orders and generating impressions. What was so interesting to me, going back to Daniel and I's first conversation that he brought up, was that I was really committed to using my own keyword targeting. I needed a software that was flexible enough that I could come in and start to manipulate it. Because again, I love machines and I want to manipulate them. So I wasn't really excited by any of the kind of out of the box tools that other companies were showing me. One, I wasn't excited because a lot of them were like built by sellers and built by other people, like even like programmatic folks. I didn't know exactly what they were doing, but I was really knew that the future would be machine learning, and I knew I needed a data engineer. So I wasn't exactly looking for like the seller with the great game or the person that did programmatic, which I don't even think relates to PPC. And I would be stuck when I would go into their technology. A couple things really stumped me. Like one, it was a black box. So if I wanted to do any customization, I had to like kind of, you know, slap my hands. I'm not allowed to do it. I mean, even for a while, it took me a while for Daniel to give me buttons as well. So it's one of those things where I was like, look, I want to drive the machine. I don't want to just, you know, it's not self-driving, you know, this isn't like an Uber ride. Like I want to drive, I want to race, you know? So I had a kind of hard time with other platforms because I couldn't do any customization. So coming into his platform, it was the first one that had customization. I just had to ask nicely for a few buttons and access to do it. And then we learned together that it was actually very powerful to do it. So when I was moving in to do this, the thing that I really figured out was I thought I had my keywords on lock. I was pretty much like, you know, not understanding the recommender at the time, only understanding search and saying, hey, I just need to put my own keywords in, don't touch it, you know, don't touch it, just bid, just bid, just bid. And it ended up that after I put my keywords in, of these 8,800 campaigns, Quartile managed over these last, you know, couple years to find an additional 4,088 targets that I overlooked. So I have done everything you would imagine on the agency side, from brand analytics analysis to keyword targeting to search term reports to product targeting to competitive analysis. I have done this stuff tirelessly and endlessly with a fantastic data science team. And at the end of the day, we load all these things up. Half our stuff works, half of it doesn't. And in the end, Quartile, because they tag the campaigns you create versus the ones they create, Quartile ended up creating as many campaigns as we did on things that I wasn't going to bid on and have never planned on bidding on. So even with fantastic insights into PPC strategy, all like the broad market things from, you know, our internal advertising reports, our brand analytics reports, I was still short half of my targeting when Quartile finished with me. So moving into here, talking about the bid and budget changes. Again, these are just so you guys know, I'm looking at, again, we're looking at April numbers. I tried to simplify everything to 1 month because I wanted it to be relevant for you guys. So this is going to be in April. Quartile in this one account made 9,981 bid changes, and that is not through Quartile's system. That is what I can see in the Seller Central history. If I'm looking at the history of changes and the type of changes, because I'm looking at that because I have my own team too. And Quartile has made 9,981 bid changes just in the month of April, and an additional 2,989 budget changes just in the month of April. I'm going to assume that my $1 million in spend for my biggest client is going to be working because of these things that are happening under the surface. So now let's talk about, Daniel, do you have any comments on that before we go into what's next?
No, I love it.
Okay, because you're probably excited the machine is doing that kind of work and we can see it in Seller Central on the history side. Okay, yes, so this is really the whole idea of this session. So this is going to be where we both believe, Daniel and I believe, that sellers would benefit from both automation and strategy. It's not that we're just here to sell you Quartile. It's not that we're here to sell you strategy. We genuinely believe, based on my numbers and based on his experience, that a lot more sellers could kind of get some advantage in having more insights into this, like the high level strategy that's actually interesting and engaging, and also will power the automation to do what it does. So I would have to say, this is the starting line of a race, I would have to say that what we can do with strategy is really kind of, like accelerate your start, accelerate the traction you get in the first few months with machine learning. And the reason for that is I think a lot of people overlook machine learning and they really say, oh, I want machine learning, but then they don't give the machine any time to learn. And they also don't give the machine any kind of roadmap about how we might want it to learn. And even if you don't give it a roadmap, which your account rep will do, you definitely need to have an understanding of like the goals. And you don't need to get under the hood like I do, but you got to know how to drive, right? And I think the main thing we could do with traction is kind of say, okay, we can, kind of go in through some strategic talks and kind of show you what it is you want to be focused on to get that traction out the gate. And it will kind of slow the kind of learning curve of the machine because you'll be doing really great things to push it along. So we have 3 strategy workshops planned, and they're planned in July, August, and September. This will be the first time that we've done this. I have tried in the past, with my own small group of like trying to do Quartile because again, we have people that want us to show them how to do it. And at the end, we just didn't have the kind of systems in place where we could build this. So now we both have the systems in place post-COVID and just a ton of systems for everything online. So we're going to go ahead and have 3 workshops that I'm going to host with Daniel, and we're going to go into some key components of the strategy, and more importantly, go into the key components of how you get the machine, his machine, to do the strategy. I think it's important that you understand that kind of crossroad that I've always been so big on for success, which is how can I get this darn machine to do what I want it to do so I could get on with my day? So that's kind of what we're going to build into this. So In the first session, we're going to start as we wish to proceed. I don't believe you should start any advertising on Amazon due to that 45% number rising without an idea of how you're going to drive the profits. I think profits are going to be the biggest problem we have. So where I might have started you even a year ago at targeting, especially going into COVID, I would have said target, target, target. Today, I would say start at profit. Start as you wish to proceed. You want to make sure you understand your numbers and how you're going to be profitable in this like ever increasing shelf and ever increasing competitive landscape. So we're going to talk about several kind of high level things on this session. We're going to talk about campaign ACoS versus total ACoS. Again, there's really key moments where you should be managing to these numbers, and then there's really key moments where you should not be. We're going to talk about how to maximize your daily budget. I think a lot of people have a daily budget and they need to know how are they going to win shelf or search as they're trying to ramp up and scale with their daily budget. We're going to talk about successfully launching a new product with something that's new in Quartile called margin optimization. And the reason I put this in here, I'm going to let Daniel talk to all these points, but the reason I put this in here is because the client that we mentioned for that 5.2 million is actually launching 10 products on top of our lack of growth on the others. So I have a kind of big chunk of problems to solve, and I really need to understand, okay, how can I quickly launch new products? Because I need to focus on winning once they're live. Then we're going to talk about setting realistic growth targets for your products and brands. And that's where I come in because, again, everything that we do as competitive strategists is measured in growth. So we don't do anything. We have 3 metrics, like I told you, and it's all based on growth. And we have targets. And if we don't hit them, we all know that we have failed to do our job. So this is going to be where I can kind of help you understand, like, how do you set the growth targets? And then if you blow them out of the water, that's great. Like we've blown ours out of the water at the 70s and the 60s. We fell so short on the 2%. And I think when you look at this though, it's important that you set realistic targets. And I can tell you the one that came in at 2, by our calculations, should be coming in at 30, and we've missed our mark. So it's important that you know what you should be growing at, because if you're not, you're missing opportunities, right? You're not putting an aggressive enough target to get the numbers that you need to get, and you're probably going to fall behind in a marketplace that's accelerated. And then if you are actually putting your targets, I see this happen especially on the D2C side, where you have these targets that are just crazy, that are just like, oh, that would never happen. Oh my gosh, have we ever hit a target like that? So I think it's important that you understand, like, first, your target can't relate to what you'd love to see in your bank account. And second of all, your target can't be undershot, because you're not going to push the campaigns hard enough to get the money that you should be getting. So Daniel, I'm going to let you speak to these points unless you want me to just keep moving.
No, I can quickly here just reinforce a couple of things, and I think it's going to be a very, very interesting and in-depth discussion. We are going to also be able to provide. Sorry, so I was muted here. So I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation, right? And we're going to be able to go in depth in terms of what to expect, realistic goals, right? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Of course, you want to get good results fast, but you have to understand that it will take some time to achieve full results. We're going to show you guys benchmarks for each main category on Amazon. What is the typical tacos? What is the typical campaign ACoS? What is the typical average cost per click conversion rate? So you guys know what to expect. We can discuss strategy. You're going to have specialists so that we can interact a lot around the profitability that is obviously key to all this conversation.
That's exciting. And I think it is important to really kind of think about that, like in the sense that there are account managers that will do this for you. But I think it's incredibly useful for you to bring some insights to the conversation, because believe it or not, you have more insights to your business and your growth targets and your goals than anybody on our side does. So it's super important that you have kind of this lens where you can at least talk to these points, have some ideas of how these points work, understand what you're going to do based on your, unique product, unique brand, unique needs, because it changes. So I think it's important that you get that. I would, again, compare it to a car. I mean, if you just want to call a taxi cab every time you got to get to the grocery store, that's great. But if you actually want to hop in the car and drive, you got to have at least a basic understanding of where you're going. So the next thing we're going to do.
Real quick, Youre and Daniel, I don't want to be the gremlin on the webinar, but I want to make sure we're looking at everybody's time. So if we could get to probably, so we have some time for Q&A. That would
Yes.
probably be good.
Sure, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, great. Let me go through it. So I'm not going to bring Daniel in to speak to the next two workshops because, we're going to, we know what we're doing. So let me go ahead and tell you guys. So the next thing is going to be talking about dominating search, the right way to expand your targeting. We're talking about the right way to structure your campaigns. As you know, we both believe in the SKAC, the single keyword async campaign. We're going to talk about, this is me. This is a big one. This is the wrong way to do keyword research, kind of relying solely on popular tools. I love when someone comes to me and says, I looked that up, and I'm not going to use any names, in blank tool. And I'm like, you know what? So did all of our competitors. That's amazing. Like, we have this unique view. This is so exciting. No, we don't. Everybody has the same data. Everybody is targeting the same keywords. And in a marketplace this competitive, you don't want to rely solely on your keyword tools to make your keyword decisions. Next thing is going to be about low coverage equals lost opportunities. A lot of people get really scared about upbidding and going to top of search because, again, you're not a mathematician, so you don't want to do it. But you're really missing opportunities if you don't win top of search, at least on your most important keywords. We're going to talk about how to use, and this is me going back to the strategy point again, how to use the new search term share report to increase revenue and profits. We've been clocking that, and we have a supplement brand that we grew from $650 a month in April to 1.3 million, and then it was acquired. So awesome. And I think they're running at like 80% profit. So 80%, not profit, 80% growth, massive profits. The third workshop we're going to do is going to be about category expansion, the stuff that I covered here in the core of the strategy, becoming the most visible product in your market. Talking about how to combine the different ad placements. These placements are getting more and more complex. You have sponsored brands headline, you have sponsored brands video, you have sponsored brands on the detail page. You guys know what it looks like. There gets to be a lot of placements. And again, we don't have infinite funds, although we have an infinite shelf. So I think it's important. There's a finite amount of money to go around and an infinite amount of things to target. So we really want to think about, where are we actually just duplicating our efforts and where are we actually combining our efforts to win and gain visibility and share. Then we're going to talk about higher impressions lead to higher brand search volume and conversion rates. That's something that we've documented definitely here on our side throughout this last quarter, is like, wow, higher impressions without question leads to higher brand search volume and conversion rates. Then we're going to talk about how to get those higher impressions and what kind of levers you want to pull, and definitely how to get those impressions for the best cost. Talking about focus on the light category shopper. This is another kind of competitive strategy highlight, which is people always focus on their niche and they're so specialized and people are going to buy this because it's just this little kind of special thing. It's not true. At the end of the day, you have to win the light category shopper. You got to win them, and that's the only body on Amazon that you need to be focused on. So you really, to accelerate growth, need to think about the category, the light category buyer, light category shopper, and meet them on the path to purchase. Talk about the frequency myth. I love this one because I think when I talk to people that love like impression frequency, I have a lot of like 24-year-old guys come into meetings with me on ad sales teams, and they say, yeah, we gotta get frequency, we gotta get repetition. And I'm like, yeah, if it were 2004, that would be super interesting to me, but it's not interesting to me today. So the frequency myth is a myth, because as you get to a big digital shelf, you need expanded coverage, not repetition. You don't need frequency as much as you need expansion. So it's really important that you understand like where you're duplicating your spend and where you're not. So this is going to be the deal. Nick, if you're out there, can you push out a link, or Lisa, whoever's available, can we push out a link to the page where they can sign up for a demo?
Yeah, we'll put a link in the chat, and everybody will also get a immediate follow-up email with all the information in it.
So can we make the link available now so that people want to get booked, they can get booked?
Yeah, we can.
Great. Okay. So when you're on the session today, we have some fantastic, obviously things that we can help you get started with Quartile. You're going to get a 55% discount off the first 2 months to kind of minimize your risk. But of course, what you need to do is schedule a demo so you get a complete understanding of how the tool is going to work for your business. Because again, I don't have that insight on this call. So we want to make sure you get the right tool and the right package and the right software. We want to make sure that you understand it front to back. So you're going to want to get in there and schedule a demo. The reason I'm asking Nick to push the link out is because I'm pretty sure those demos are going to book out. And if you do want to see the software, you're going to want to make sure that you get booked, because the code expires on the 30th. So I don't want you guys to like, get into the demo queue and then not get booked soon enough where you can take advantage of this code, because this code is a code you can use when you purchase, not when you book the demo. So we want to make sure you get in there and get that done. So you can just use.
And I see that a couple of people are asking here about like the 3 webinars you just discussed here, if they are open or whatever. They are for the ones that onboard using your code. They are on your program, so are going to be available on the webinars to answer questions and so forth. So it's, if you guys want to go this route, which you should, because you guys see how much she understands what we do and how much we have been successful working together, it has to be up to June 30, because then we're going to start onboarding the clients for this program, and we're going to be scheduling the webinars that will be exclusive for folks that use the Urban Cowgirl code.
Yes, I won't be, I am a competitive strategist. So if you're not coming in under my roster, I'm not going to be sharing the content in a broad way, because my goal is that, if you're going to, follow me into the fire, then I'm going to make sure you come out winning. So on that sense, no, it's just going to be for this particular group. You guys are the first group that we've offered it. So it will just be for the people that register on this webinar, or any other future webinar that really makes sense, and that the tool makes sense for them. But yes, it's just for you. So if you have, this is what you can do to make sure that you're invited to the webinars. You can go ahead and you can send an email to Lisa at the Urban Cowgirl. She's here in the chat, and we're going to go into Q&A. You can send an email to Lisa at theurbancowgirl.com with your Quartile ID after you get signed up. I would really appreciate if you did that, so that we can make sure we understand how many people are coming, what we need to do on the training. It would be amazing. And then I think if you also want to include in that email your most pressing question around advertising, that would be awesome too, to make sure these events actually address your questions and get you off with the traction that you need. So if you could send that to Lisa, I would appreciate it. Again, don't send any emails to Lisa until you're already signed up though. You'll have a Quartile ID the first time you log in. It comes up right for your account name, like the top. And so when you get that ID, go ahead and send that over, and we'll make sure that you get an invite to the workshops, and we'll make sure that we have logged your questions so that we can make sure that during the Q&A, we address exactly